Okay, welcome to the Prophetic Outlook. And you can see that we have a guest on tonight. We have returning with us good friend, great preacher, great teacher of the Word of God, uh, CEO of Rev 310, and new fitness model, Pete Garcia. Guys, so say hello to Pete as you come on, guys.
Let me point the direction that way.
Yeah. Just do the pose. So, guys, we just make sure you're saying where you're coming in from. We've got Debbie here. We've got Gerald or Jared FD, Rhonda. I don't know why I try and do this without glasses. We've got Nana Cat. We've got Angel, Kathy Morris, Steve Kahn, Sir Pierce DeVille, Freedom, Callie Gal is here, Caterlin is here, Rose Russell, Brandy Coolman. Guys, keep saying hello as you're coming on. And if you can, do me the favor of hitting the like button. And if you can share it on your own social media, that would be fantastic as well. So we have loads to talk about. And you would have seen our thumbnail about a reshaping going on. And it's the things that are happening in this world right now. And one of the things that I'm going to delve right into with Pete here is that I kind of hold to a theory that the Third Reich never really went away. They kind of just hibernated. They were kind of prominent in the American rocket research and NASA. They were prominent in industrialization across the board, big banking. But one of the other attributes sort of associated with that is the rise of anti-Semitism. I don't believe anti-Semitism went away post-World War II, but it just kind of hibernated. And now we're seeing a re-emergence of this. And who I want to talk about, or what I want to talk about just to kick us off this evening, is this. Let me see if I can share this. Hold on. Here we go. The platforming of this young, let's say, racist Hitler lover, uh, Nick Fuentes by Tucker Carlson. I want to get your opinion on this because I personally think that this throws out any credibility that Tucker Carlson still had. It throws it out of the basket now. He doesn't have the same credibility. If you saw the video afterwards, Nick Fuentes went on and started saying how much he loved Hitler, how cool a guy Hitler was. So let me know your thoughts on this partnership.
I'm not that familiar with Nick Fuentes, although I've heard that he has pro Third Reich sympathies or whatever. My beef is with Tucker Carlson,
Yeah.
and I think that Dinesh D'Souza did an amazing breakdown of him and Candace Owens and like what went wrong with them
Mm-hmm.
over the years. Because I grew up watching Tucker Carlson on Fox News, and I always thought that he was incredibly bright and insightful. But once he got let go from Fox and he went out on his own, things began to kind of go down for him in terms of he didn't have any restraints on him anymore, and he could just kind of go into whatever subjects that he wanted to. And I think the biggest issue with him is that he was raised in a mainline Protestant denomination, Episcopal, Lutheran, or something. I'm not really sure which one of those. And we know that those churches, those denominations from the Protestant Reformation, they came out of the Protestant Reformation. They got some things right, but one of the things that they brought over with them from Roman Catholicism was the amillennial perspective of eschatology,
Mm-hmm.
which denies the future literal thousand-year kingdom of Christ. And it also diminishes the role of Israel in the last days. And so the first thing that we begin to notice is his sharp criticisms of Israel, and that was not on par with criticisms on any other country. Like it was solely directed against Israel, but not against. He wasn't addressing the starving children in Yemen or the Arab on Arab mass murdering, in other countries throughout the Middle East. It was just hyper focused on Israel. So you can see that anti-Semitism starting to kind of bubble up to the top. And then he
Yeah.
starts to bring on guys that also have bad eschatology, like the cowboy singer.
The one that sang that Revelation song.
Yeah, yeah, that guy is. I don't want to say he's an idiot, but when it comes to biblical eschatology, he's very ignorant on the subject, and you
Hmm.
can quote me on that. He's very ignorant on the
Yeah,
subject, and so he gets a platform like that with Tucker Carlson, and you can just see Tucker Carlson's kind of eating this up because it diminishes Israel's role, and it overemphasizes this idea that the church has to reconquer the world for Christ, and that
hmm,
it's the church's responsibility. So it's very militant Christendom, Christianity kind of thing, where it reminds me very much of like the what is it the in the NAR, the New Apostolic
yeah,
Reformation. There's
yeah,
the Gideon's Army, or what was it
yeah,
the I don't know. There's all these different offshoots and branches of folks that think they have to reclaim territory. In fact, when I was in Afghanistan, this was 2013, the chaplain that we had was very much Pentecostal. And I remember he wanted us to walk around the airfield at night and go out and reclaim, pray over like this area, and like reclaim the territory for Christ. And at this point, I already knew, like, I knew that that was not biblically sound
yeah.
theology, but I just went along just to see, like, what were they going to do, you know? And so, obviously that didn't work out because we ended up running out of Afghanistan with our tail between our legs, 10 years later, or not even that many years later. So it's to me, he's platforming these guys with bad eschatology, bad politics, bad ideology. He seems to be getting funded from other sources that are anti-Israel, and not that he needs funding from Qatar because he makes a lot of money on his own.
Hmm.
He doesn't need funding from Qatar, but it's the sympathies and the things that they're bringing into the relationship with him, like the folks in the Middle East, and he's using that. They're using him to influence Trump and to use that to influence the conservative right, to divide the conservative
Yeah.
right in America from standing with Israel. They're trying to isolate Israel, and so they're dumping billions of dollars into these influencers and stuff. And if they can bring along guys that are sympathetic to Hitler, and I've seen a lot of this, this is starting to become a trend in the younger generation where they're leaning very much. They're not coming out right and saying, that they love Hitler or anything like that, but they're coming out and kind of doing like the Nazi salute without
Yeah.
doing the salute, but they're kind of alluding to it. There's channels that are popping up all over social media, Instagram, TikTok, and others that are hinting at that and making it look cool. And so it's coming back around. It's not died out. And like you said, the Third Reich did not go away with the Nuremberg trials. It just morphed and it was shifted into something a lot more subtle and brought into industry, banking, and now into social media.
See, this is something I think that it's permeated the church, but it's permeated in such a way because you have, like you said, influencers online, and one of the things that is happening is they're positioning themselves as authorities. Because you listen to Tucker Carlson, and he said that his biggest grievance was Christians who believed in the state of Israel, and they need to readjust their theology. They need to actually go back to the Bible. Now, as far as I know, and this is no like slate, because if you've read the Bible, you've read the Bible. But I think they only read the Bible for the first time last year, and then to turn around and claim, he's got an authority on this. When you look at, like, what is the I've seen this poll done, right? So, what is the most talked about thing in the Bible? What is the most written about thing in the Bible? It is not, believe it or not, salvation, despite that being the central theme of the whole of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Salvation, in terms of the word, is mentioned like 174 times. Israel is mentioned 2,500 plus times. All of dispensationalism is centered around the one, the reestablishment of Israel, but also Jacob's trouble. And I think, do you think then this is something that we're seeing in terms of, if we're talking about a global shift, a shift that has to happen? If you get these influencers, like you said, influencing the likes of policy, political movement, because we've heard the whole rhetoric coming out from the U.S. administration in terms of the annexation of the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. The annexation of that would be a red line for them, and it would. I think it was it Lindsey Graham? It was someone like that came out and said that would mean that Israel would lose the support of America. Do you think that this is where the agenda is?
Yeah. So when we read Daniel 4, I think 17, if I'm not mistaken, and then Acts 17:26, where God is the one who appoints the leaders and he's the one that sets the boundaries and stuff for nations. I think that God definitely had a plan for Donald Trump to come back into office
Yeah,
for a very specific reason. Now, what is Satan going to do? Satan obviously couldn't stop that, even though he tried. He tried to have him assassinated twice. He tried all these trials. He tried all of that stuff to derail the Trump administration. But it's like water off a duck's back. It didn't phase him. He just kept going forward.
yeah,
And I think in moments like that, God empowers people in situations to make his agenda plan happen.
hmm,
And so now that he's in office, what is Satan going to try to do? He can't stop Trump from being president. Now he's got to divide his base. He's got to divide his
yeah,
support. He's going to leverage all of that, the success and the wins and everything like that. He's going to leverage that against this tiny nation of Israel that continues to be a thorn in the globalist side in terms of like trying to accomplish some kind of agenda. Globalists aren't, and I'm not going to speak for all of them, obviously, or any of them really, but a lot of them probably don't realize that they are working to fulfill Satan's
yeah,
plan for a one world system. They probably don't see it that way because they probably don't even believe in Satan.
hmm,
But Satan doesn't care if they believe; he's just going to use them to drive his agenda, and he has got to destroy Israel. He has got to, if that, he knows Satan knows the lake of fire is real. He knows the abyss is real. He knows these are very, very horrible places that he doesn't want to go to. They are more real to him than to anybody else on this planet right now. He knows that, and he's going to do whatever he can, whatever angle he can, whatever seed he can sow, whatever house he can tear down, or whatever. He is going to work that in order to try and break Bible prophecy, and the biggest way that he can do that right now is by destroying the nation of Israel. And it seems like every time he tries something like October 7th, it backfires, because like what did Israel do? They plotted and then they turned around and destroyed all their immediate enemies. I mean,
hmm,
in a rapid time, you
yeah,
know. And things would have been very different on October 7th had Hezbollah joined in, had everybody joined in, dogpiled at that time. But they hesitated, they waited for whatever reason, and it was to their own demise. And now God has took something that was for evil and made it for something good. And this is also continuing the prophetic agenda going forward. And Satan is going to keep working that, and he's going to keep trying to divide the base of Donald Trump, who is arguably the most powerful human on the planet right now in terms of being able to wield influence and power. So he's bringing in these Paulo White. I mean, all these people that just are not good. And so they're influencing him, and they're trying to treat Israel as just this geopolitical situation. He does not see it from the biblical lens. And I don't know if Mike Huckabee has not had any influence in this matter to share with him, or if it's simply Trump is not simply giving enough credence to the biblical perspective on this, but he's not treating this like he should be. He's treating this like it's like another Ukraine issue, or it's like a Nigeria issue, or it's just some kind of a geopolitical issue that he's going to work. And so that's how Satan is. He's always seeking to divide and conquer, and if he can't divide and conquer, he'll corrupt and pervert. And if he can't corrupt and pervert, then he'll just try and destroy it outright. And that's he's always working that, and because he knows where he doesn't want to go, and he is. I mean, trust me, he is working every single angle that he can to prevent this from being fulfilled, from Israel reclaiming Judea and Samaria, which they already rightfully won in the 6 Day War.
yeah,
And not only that, it's historically their biblical heartland, and that has to be reclaimed and annexed to the full extent of it, in order for Gog and Magog, for the conditions to be met in Gog and Magog, where at the beginning, where they're living in unwalled villages at peace and all this kind of stuff. You can't have that unless they control the Judea and Samaria.
Well, even at that, you look at the statistics that are put out now that says that 60% of Christians don't believe in an actual Satan. Now, how can then we expect a politician to adhere to, this is a satanic plan. But then, like you said, I kind of wonder about those who are surrounding him now. I was never really aware of Paula White before all of this and stuff, but obviously I looked into her after it, and I don't think that's a good person to be in as an influencer to the president. But if we shift gears just a little bit, you've got Israel happening, and there's this geopolitical shifting happening. You've got Israel happening. You seem to have the Zechariah 12 moment, where there is a furor, or Isaiah 13, where there's a tumultuous roar coming from the nations against Israel, and it's growing because one of the things that we have here in our home in Belfast, let me see if I've got this. They are wanting at City Hall to fly the Palestinian flag. Now they're going to. So they're going to fly the Palestinian flag at City Hall. Now this is all broke out after a row because one politician, I think it's our education minister here, went to Israel to visit, the Holy Land, to actually spend time with hostage victims and things like that. And those in power, those who are the governing rule here in Northern Ireland, have called for his immediate removal because he went there. Now, this is despite the fact that our government leaders in Northern Ireland are Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA. The IRA were trained by Hezbollah. It's double standard. But do you think that it's a case of not no news or no Jews, no news, but kind of there's such a bullseye right now on Israel and everything else gets thrown to the side?
Yeah, it's a common. Israel's become an easy scapegoat for everybody to kind of to partner up with, even people they may not agree with ideologically or religiously. They can agree that they both want to get rid of the Jewish people or get them out of their countries, or get rid of Israel or whatever the case is. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, kind of thing,
Yeah,
with regard
yeah,
to these seemingly disparate groups partnering up together, like Queers for Palestine. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. I mean, like those people were to set foot in Palestine, or not Palestine, Gaza,
yeah,
Rafah City, all those places. Like they would just be strung up by their feet, upside down and thrown off a building. So there's zero tolerance for that in that. It doesn't make any sense, and the only thing that makes sense is that Satan has got them so blinded
yeah,
to reality and the truth that they're willing to work with people that hate them just so that they hate this other group even more, and they can come together on that joint issue. And that's it's also kind of part and parcel how, if you look back in the early 20th century, Europe was just a boiling pot of different ideologies and political movements, and you had anarchists, socialists, Marxists, communists, and every fascist and every variation therein. And it was just like, which one of these groups is going to arise to the top? And they took the easiest issue that they could take, which is anti-Semitism,
yeah,
and they began to make them the focal point of everybody's collective hate. And so I think that's the same. We're starting to see that same thing being revived. And the one thing that October 7th did, because after World War II and after the realization of the Holocaust and the death camps and all those kinds of things, anti-Semitism went way underground. I mean, if you were anti-Semitic and you were, look at Mel Gibson. Look what they did to him. A
yeah.
couple of years ago when he got caught in a DUI.
Hmm.
I mean, they basically ran him out on a rail, and but that sentiment was always there.
Yeah,
What October 7th did is it peeled that away, and now you could be, prior to the October 7th, you could be anti-Zionist and be politically correct, but it was still politically incorrect to be anti-Semitic. October 7th peeled the veneer back on that, and now both of those just came out in the open,
yeah,
and it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, when you watch those videos, they're so horrific from Hamas. I don't know how any sober-minded person can watch that and think in any way, shape, or form that what they did was justified in any way, shape, or form. And
yeah,
yet they're justifying it, just like Tucker Carlson is justifying this stuff. And when Satan gets a foot in the door in your life, I mean, he's not satisfied with just the foot. He's going to get all the way in. So he's going to push that door wide open. And next thing you know, he's bringing on Nick Fuentes, or he's bringing on this cowboy singer, country singer, and this nun with a mustache.
Yeah,
The other
yeah,
people, like, they're spouting nonsense. It's just
yeah.
you just buy into that, and so I don't know. He's drank the Kool Aid, and it seems to me he's not putting it down. He's not putting that bottle down. He's still drinking it. So I don't know what happens to him or what happens to his program, but obviously, I think obviously this is not a surprise to God. He's got this all under control, and we're just seeing this all kind of play out. And you know, his opinion, as powerful as Tucker is in terms of being an influencer,
Mhm.
is nothing to God. It's not. It's like Psalm 2. Like, God mocks and laughs at these types of people in their derision.
Well, you brought up World War II there, and I just think that, like I said at the start, I think that when we talk about prophecy, prophecy is pattern for me. That I see it the way the rabbis would have seen it: prophecy being pattern, and the Moedim being like a coil. That you start to see a cyclical event of things, like Ecclesiastes tells us, there's nothing new under the sun. So when we look at World War II and we look at the settings for that, I see that as a template for what is to come. So one is the anti-Semitism, but another thing to point out is the economic conditions that led up to the rise of a leader pre World War II, in terms of, we had the 1929 Wall Street crash, we had reparations from World War One, and this allowed the atmosphere of a discontentment within society for a populist leader such as Adolf Hitler to come through, who I don't believe was the Antichrist, but I believe was an Antichrist. And in that, do you think, because I'll tell you what's happening right now. So we have our budget coming out in the UK. Rachel Reeves is going to be coming out with this budget, and already loads and loads of tax rises are proposed. And one of the things that actually caught me off guard was there's a thing called VAT, which is like your sales tax. But in America, a company or a business will pay sales tax once they hit the 100,000 turnover threshold. That's similar to the UK right now. It's 90,000. But one of the proposals that Rachel Reeves has said is to drop that dramatically in the next few months to 30,000, which would mean that any small business, a corner shop, or anything like that, would have to pay this regardless of profit. They would have to pay. For some, it'll be 20%. Some, it's like a flat rate of 8.5%. But still, that will break down cash flow. That will cause hyperinflation. Do
Yeah.
you think that we're being positioned for an economic collapse? I do. I'll just let you know, purposefully for a leader to come through.
Look at the United States, right? We went through 8 years of Obama.
Yeah,
People were so fed up with the way things were going in the U.S. that it allowed for a complete outsider, a complete just the dark horse candidate like a Donald Trump to come in and win because he was just speaking the truth. He wasn't holding back anything. The first Republican debate that they had, and he just out and out addressed illegal immigration. He
yeah,
was saying the quiet parts out loud, and I wrote about this then. This would have been early 2016. I said he's going to win the nomination, and I said it again before he won the election in September after the Stormy Daniels thing came out. I said he's still going to win. I don't know how. It just seems like all of these scandals, even up until that point, were water off a duck's back to him. It just it would have crippled any other candidate.
yeah,
All I have to say is that those terrible politicians created such a desperation in the populace that it allowed for a dark horse candidate like Trump to win, and not only win that time, but win in 2020, even though they took it from him, and then win again in 2024 because of how terrible the Biden administration was. I think that Great Britain is being positioned in that same sense, where you're going to have just terrible. I mean, Farmer and all these terrible leaders that are just going to drive the population to the point, a breaking point, and either you have civil war at one point on one end, or you bring in this dark horse populist type candidate that sweeps in like Donald Trump. And I think that's the same issue that we're seeing with Europe. they and not every country. I mean, some countries are doing better
Yeah.
than others. Poland and Austria, I think, are doing okay. But you have a lot of other countries that are under the boot heel of the EU, and they are so desperate, so fed up with the way that the bureaucrats are running it. It seems like a Hegelian dialectic from the satanic spiritual level that they're going to cry out for somebody to come in and save them. They want their own version of Donald Trump. The Great Britain wants their own version of Donald Trump. Every country wants that. Argentina got Milei; he's their
Yeah.
version. Bukele in El Salvador, they come in and they just become incredibly popular. They come in, they sweep up, they clean up all the crime, they correct the economy, etc. So we know Italy, Melani,
Hmm.
Giorgia Melani, I think is her name.
It
So
is.
there is that desire, and I think that Satan is intentionally allowing these terrible leaders to rule in such a way that doesn't make any kind of sense, but it drives the population crazy, and it drives them to the point of desperation that they will cry out for somebody to come in. So I think Satan is positioning the right guy. Look at the guy that just took over from the Netherlands, that won the election there in the Netherlands. I don't remember his name, but man, he is young, good looking, centrist, but kind of leans populist a little bit. I think I'm telling you, I think all of these problems are conditioning Europe right now, to include Great Britain, to get to the point of desperation that they're going to cry out for their own Donald Trump version. And whoever that guy is,
Yeah.
whatever country he comes out of, I think I don't think that we'll see him this side of the rapture, but we're at that breaking point now in the UK. We're at that breaking point now in a lot of in Germany and other places where they're just fed up with it. They're fed up with the immigration. They're fed up with the stabbings. They're fed up with the crime, the no-go zones, the Sharia law, all of that stuff, the grooming gangs. All of that stuff is being driving people to the point of desperation, and the right guy is going to come in and he's going to seemingly do what Trump did. I think so. I think Trump is foreshadowing
Hmm.
happen in Europe. So
I want to pick up just on the stabbings aspect. I'll tell you something a little bit personal now, but you saw this. This was Ricky Gervais's ad in the Tube in London, and a Pacific can has went absolutely nuts, calling for it to be taken down. But then we've had like the train stabbing, we've had so many things on the street, including machete fights in London. Where we live, probably about 500 yards away on our street, there was a young fella stabbed to death in his house. What are we on Tuesday? Yesterday, or late Sunday night. And it just seems to me that Matthew 24 verse 12 is coming to the fore. I can't see that.
no, somebody was asking in the chat about
Oh,
the.
the Dutch guy. Yeah.
Yeah, his name is Jetten. But anyways, that's the guy who won, not
Well,
Geert Wilders.
Matthew 24, verse 12, that the love of many will grow cold. Now, here's the thing, I don't want anybody to be down. Obviously, this is the thing, we're watchmen, we talk about what's happening, but at the same time, we have the hope of Jesus Christ. So I want to tell you just something personally, that the individual who was murdered on our street, on our road, young fella in his 20s, the police called round to all the houses yesterday asking, interviewing, did you know him, so and so. I actually realized I did know him. That a year ago, I got a knock on our front door, and this young man was standing at our front door. He was a little bit worse for wear. Yeah, I think he had maybe some substance abuse issues, and he asked for some food, so I fed him. And then I spent a couple of hours talking to him, was able to witness to him about Jesus, and he gave his life. He accepted Christ there. He broke down, accepted Christ. Now, obviously, he still had substance issues, and I don't know what his life sort of entailed after that. But it kind of, for me, we're seeing all of this darkness, but that random thing that he walked up our street. Could have chosen anybody, doesn't know anybody. We haven't lived here that long. Walked up our driveway, knocked our door, and it happened to be a pastor who answered the door. Shows me that God is still in control. And I don't know about you, but I think Are you witnessing the same level of lawlessness that we're sort of seeing here in the UK?
Honestly, it felt like that during the 4 years of Biden. It really felt
Mm,
like things were completely out of control. I think with Trump coming in and doing all the ICE raids and the FBI crackdown on corruption, across everything, I think there is a fear put back in the criminal element, and especially with the attack on the cartels, this outright war that we're waging against the cartels and the drug trade here is certainly. I thought it was going to be chaotic. I thought the cartels would fight back, and that maybe they still will. I don't know, but it seems like they've just gotten their teeth kicked in pretty hard, and they're still reeling from all the hits. So things right now don't seem as lawless. Uh,
yeah,
but we were expecting food riots on Saturday. Once this welfare went out, but it didn't happen. So for whatever reason, I think this is evidence of the restraint that the Holy Spirit is able still to hold things back across the board until the right time, until time that whenever that time is going to happen, things will explode on the scene like it did in 2020 during
hmm
the George Floyd riots and stuff. But right now, I think that restraint is felt here in the U.S. At least where I am, where I'm at, and
yeah.
the news that I'm seeing. I know things still happen, but
Well, if
it
we shift it back to economics, I guess obviously we've got the digital ID being rolled out here already. Um, and I talked about, so I want to compare this with America, just like we were doing there. I talked about Rachel Reeves and the possibility with this fat. Another thing that she's done, which shows me that this is kind of, you kind of feel like in the UK that you're being squeezed into this sort of small place. They are bringing in a tax, a 20% tax for anybody wanting to leave the country because there's been so many millionaires and billionaires that have left the country because of the increased taxes. So I want to bring this back to America, right? What we have over here is a Fabian heavy government, right? Part of the Fabian society, believe in the social construct under socialism, cheap communism, believe in social engineering, believe in depopulation. But then you've got your probably forerunner for the New York mayor position, Mamdani. Do you think that now, so what Trump has done is, like you said, giving you that, I guess you guys have went back to like a slower pace down the rabbit hole. Do you think that we're seeing with individuals like that coming on the scene and being possibly being, the next individual in power in the big, probably the most influential city in America? Do you think that that's showing that this is still coming, that this curve is still coming at the end of the Trump administration?
I don't think he's going to win. I mean, he could win, and I could be completely wrong on that. But I think that the power brokers in New York City, Wall Street, and everything else do not want a communist in
Yeah,
ruin, because it's going to drive all the wealth out of that city. I mean, a lot of the wealth has already left that city, but this would be the nail in the coffin. It'd be like another Dearborn, Michigan, or another kind of failed, Minneapolis place where the Muslims are kind of in charge. I personally, in my gut, don't feel like that's what's going to happen. I think Cuomo will probably win this by a squeaker, and that may have some help from the administration. Trump definitely wants Cuomo in there over Zamdani.
yeah, yeah,
But and so here's the thing too about Islam. Islam is a weapon that Satan is wielding right now and has wielded for the better part of the 20th century. He's wielded it through the Ottoman Empire, at times, and it's kind of waxed and waned, etc. But I think in the 20th century, especially after 1948, it's been weaponized against the world writ large, and it's caused all sorts of chaos and death and destruction. I don't think that it's going to be the thing that Satan is going to put all his eggs in that basket going into the 70th week. And
yeah,
so, if anything, I think Zamdani is a forcing mechanism for compromise. I would take the other guy, the conservative guy, over Cuomo, but since we can't get enough people to vote for this conservative guy, and we definitely don't want Zamdani, I think I'm saying his name right. I don't really
Mamdani, I think it is.
Mondani or Monza,
Mamdani.
whatever. Anyways, his we're being forced to compromise with a Cuomo. Who,
Yeah.
but Cuomo realizes that he is the better option than this crazy radical communist leftist on far to his left and Cuomo's left. So I think it's like a forcing mechanism to get people to compromise and to keep compromising and compromising and compromising. And it's the same thing with the MAGA movement. It's a big tent. Well, that big tent has all kinds of people inside of it that we don't all agree on a lot of things, but we agree that we all agreed that we did not want Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for sure. And so I think I don't know. I think that Zamdani or whatever his name is not going to win. I think Cuomo will
Well,
win.
to bring it back to what you said before, in terms of who supports who, we've got a red green alliance in terms of both, socialism and Islam, but also what we've noticed over the since October 7th, that it's not just red and green, but it's rainbow as well. And I know that he's polling really well in with Americans who were not born in America. Um, and then we're seeing the support from let's say organizations such as Rolling Stone. Now that's quite small. I don't know if I can read that, but hold on. Um, so Rolling Stone has put out Mamdani is not in the country illegally. Mamdani does not have any connection to 9/11 or jihadist terrorism. Mamdani hasn't said or done anything anti Semitic, which is an absolute lie. Mamdani did not call for to globalize intifada. And Mamdani is not a communist. There's quite a few statements on there I would completely disagree with. And specifically when you look at Mamdani's father, and he wrote that we shouldn't really, I'm trying to remember this, criminalize or demonize suicide bombers. Instead, we should see them as the political activists that they are. Now, I know that's not a quote, that's not a direct quote, but it summarizes what he was saying. And it just seems to me that you're starting to see, like, whether or not Mandani is the individual who gets put in at this stage. So we have Sadiq Khan in London, who is very like, they're like carbon copies of each other. It could be, like you said, that you've got a restraining administration at the minute, certainly for conservative values, perhaps not Christian values, but conservative values. But am I right? We would both agree that it's still going to go in that direction,
Yeah.
but maybe at what stage we don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's always the ball. If you follow football at all, they have the chains on the side of the on the field where they mark where the
Oh, you mean
ball
proper
is.
football?
What's that?
Proper proper football.
Yeah, real
Exactly.
football. Yeah.
Yeah, not the stuff that you hold in your hands, but the stuff. Yeah, yeah.
The chains are always being moved down the field. It doesn't matter who's got the ball. It doesn't matter what's in play. The chains are constantly moving. And so I think that regardless, I wrote about this a while back, but like you look at what the left does, the left promotes lawlessness because it cements their power and it also gives them the ability to hide what they're own doing, hide the wickedness and stuff that they're doing because there's so much other stuff going on top of that,
Yeah.
that people are focused on the big stuff. They're not worried about the grifting and all that, the money that's changing hands behind the scenes. But what the conservative does when he comes in is he's got to bring in law and order like Trump has done and militarize the police, and he's got to militarize law enforcement. He's got to bring in new legislation to crack down on things and to crack down on the corruption. Either way, it keeps militarizing and keeps creating this authoritarian state. And
Mm.
whether it comes from the left or the right, it's constantly moving that direction. And then with his pushing for stablecoin, for a project that was it Operation Stargate or whatever it is,
Yeah.
all the digitalization of everything and the tokenization that you've talked about, we're building all that infrastructure. And Trump's looking at it as it's a good thing for the economy. I would look at it if Biden were doing this, it was evil that he's getting ready to take over and get rid of the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of conservatives don't see the threat in all of this, but the threat is still there regardless. Trump is not always going to be in power right? I mean, let's just say hypothetically that the
Yeah.
world is going to go on for another 50 years. Trump's maybe got another 4 or 5, maybe 10 years at the most. But whoever takes over after him had better be on the same page as him, or else it's going to be the left or whoever. I think the Democrat Party is dead. I think they're done.
Yeah.
I think what comes out of that is maybe some type of a progressive movement or independent progressives or Greens or maybe the coalition we're talking about, the Rainbow Coalition, et cetera. But I think in terms of the name brand recognition, the Democrat Party is dead. And I think that whatever comes in the next election, we should find a good bellwether will be the midterms coming up here
Mhm.
about if it's a red sweep or not. And I think it will be a red sweep. And even today, there's a lot of elections going on across the country, and traditionally blue states like New Jersey could turn red. So we're just kind of waiting and seeing how that plays out. But I think Mamdani doesn't win. I think Cuomo definitely is going to give Cuomo a run for his money. But I think the powers that be, the real power brokers, and Mamdani does vote. He polls well for people outside of the city that don't live in New York City.
Mhm.
But the people that live in New York City have overwhelmingly selected Cuomo because he's a known entity. They know him. They don't know this guy and what kind of craziness he's going to bring in. So it definitely is driving people to a point of compromise. Even people that would normally not vote for Cuomo are now going to have to vote for Cuomo over this other guy just so that they can guarantee that Cuomo gets in and doesn't hand the reins over to this communist Muslim whatever guy. And nobody cares about the Rolling Stone anymore. That's like the View coming out and endorsing things. Like nobody cares about what they think. So Rolling Stone's opinions on this is nil. But that's my opinion.
Well, here's the thing that I sort of noticed is that, like, when we talk about Israel, we see that there's a problem when it comes to the advisors, certainly the faith advisors around Trump and his acknowledgement and understanding of that. Where he's done great things, and to be honest, I think if it was Biden in power, we would have seen we would have seen a Palestinian state backed when it came to the meeting of the UN. We would have seen all of that, and it would have been
Yeah.
a detriment to the Israeli state. But also in terms of economics, who he's surrounded by. He's got people like Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, Jensen Huang, all of these individuals who I personally would look at and think, if I was talking about maybe a 10 king, 10 technocratic system,
Mm-hmm.
these are individuals that sort of, like start ticking things for me. So I don't know if you saw this. I've talked an awful lot about the Bank of International Settlements, the most powerful, most sort of autonomous bank that there is, in that they don't have any world authority clamping down and no legislation upon them. They can operate outside of legislation as a byproduct of World War I into World War II. And they're the most influential, and they were the ones that came up with the idea of tokenization. Everything I think we messaged about that, but tokenization, everything being on a world ledger. And then you go to the private sector, and you've got BlackRock, Larry Fink, and one of the things that, like, Larry Fink also, who's now the interim head of the World Economic Forum,
Mm-hmm.
believes that everything should be tokenized, and BlackRock is now proposing an investment for globalization 2.0, 68 trillion savings. Now that's important toward local infrastructure and ESG goals via automatic pension enrollment in Europe. Now, what that means, this isn't 68 trillion from BlackRock's wallet. This is 68 trillion from automatic enrollment for every individual under pension schemes, taking it out of your money, out of your pay packet, and then paying it into this new infrastructure. So here's my thing, right? And I didn't think we'd sort of center around the Trump administration on this, but Trump has just recently tried to cut the red tape of international banking, which plays into a lot of BlackRock's proposals for this. You cut the red tape, you cut legislation, it sets up the freedom for this infrastructure to be built up. Do you think that's those around him advising this? Or do you think he's just short sighted and looking for that economic boost? Because I think that this is this is the door opening for an economic based system around the world.
I'm not too read up on that, but I know that Scott Bessent is one of his trade or financial advisor. I forget what position he holds in the government, but he's probably one of the leading experts on foreign currency and trade across any circle inside of Washington or outside of Washington. He's incredibly well versed in all that stuff, and I think that he's probably got the president's ear on that because the president is in lockstep with what Bessent is talking about in terms of, I think he was probably the guy that proposed tariffs as a countermeasure to make it a more equal playing field across the U.S. and across the world.
Yeah.
So Scott Bessent is certainly one guy that he listens to. I think, but here's kind of a micro or macro view of all this. We are now in 2025. We are at the tail end of the third industrial revolution, and parts of the world are still kind of more steeped in the third industrial revolution than we are. And we are now well into the fourth industrial revolution, which part of that is the Internet of Everything.
Yeah.
The idea of this began back in the early 2000s. If anything can be connected to the Internet, it will be. And so that was where that idea of tokenization comes. It gets teeth to it now because now things can be connected to the internet that normally aren't, like a refrigerator or a car or a watch or clothes or whatever. And so we know that that is the direction that the world's going to go in because Revelation 13 says that's the way the world's going to go. So we can see that that general trend is moving in that direction. The black swan events, if I can put it that way, is that we're also in the fourth turning point. So we're at the end of at the cycle that these nations go through and the power brokers in the world. So now we're at this incredibly tumultuous time where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of economic uncertainty, there's a lot of political ideologies, there's a lot of merging of ideologies. This is all very reminiscent to the time that you mentioned earlier, that the time leading up to World War II,
Yeah.
right? And so all of this, everything that we're pointing to right now is pointing to another type of global war that's right on the horizon. And I think a lot of people can sense it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you're seeing nations kind of rushing out to build these alliances with like-minded, either neighboring countries or countries that they have strategic or logistical interest in, like from rare earth minerals, oil, gas, certain kind of crops, etc. Access points through straits and choke points and whatnot. So I think that there's also that agenda working behind the scenes. So we're kind of multi-layered right now in terms of where the world is, much more convoluted than it was in World War II because things are much more complicated
Yeah.
than they were in that time. Think back to World War One. What were the conditions in the world leading up to World War One? The world wasn't at war. The world was, at the height almost in the second industrial revolution. Mass
Yeah.
production was going out across the board, and countries in Europe were using that to build up their armies. There was a great deal of prosperity going on, and times seemed to be good. And the world was caught off guard by like this event, the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Serbia, and that caught the world off guard. People, I mean, they had just come out with a book the year prior, the Illusion, basically saying that the world would not see war anymore. As nations become more capitalistic, they're not going. It wouldn't be in their best interest to go to war, right? Because they would lose business and they would lose money, etc. And that's the way they saw that. And obviously, the World War One started that next year. World War II, though, was predicated by a great deal of uncertainty, and in that desperation, a guy like Hitler rises up out of the chaos, and people
Mm-hmm.
gravitate toward him. And so I don't see Trump like Hitler in that sense, but I do see people gravitating toward him.
Yeah.
He seems to have the mojo behind him. He's got the momentum behind him. And so he's not advocating for the same things that Hitler is advocating for. But I think that this same type of, I just call it mojo. I think the same kind of mojo is what Europe is desperately needing right now. And they're wanting somebody to rise up out of Europe that is going to lead them out of this morass and out of these
Mm-hmm.
problems, the distress of nations with perplexity. And I think that this is what everything is gearing towards that. The economics factor is one section of this. The political, geopolitical, religious, military, diplomatic, all of those kinds of little spheres that are kind of touching on everything right now. and there's no clear winner as to which technology is going to be the technology or which political ideology is going to be the political ideology. And I think that's where that uncertainty is. And I think populism is going to have, it's going to be that, look, the red green alliance, the rainbow alliance, all of that stuff, it's not based in reality, and that's why it's not going to work. And Satan knows that it's not going to work because it doesn't work in reality. Communism doesn't work in reality. It works fine in theory, but it doesn't work in reality because human
Mhm.
nature is corrupted, and we're never going to just everybody's going to live in utopia, like we just, my door is open if you want to come stay in my house. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger. Like, we're all corrupted and broken individuals, so we can't trust people just to come into our house and not rape and murder us. Like, that's that's not based in reality. So Satan is not an idiot. Satan knows that that's not going to work. He is going to use that as a tool to drive people to the point of desperation. He's going to raise one guy up or a group of guys up, maybe the 10, and then he's going to have them give them just normal common sense, and everybody's going to flock to them like they're these saviors. And that's what he's really desperate for, because it's much easier for Satan to get, if he's going to get the Antichrist to rule over the world, and he is,
Mhm.
much easier for him to get that through 10 regions than it is through 193 separate nations that are all going on their own directions and their own agendas and their own everything. So he's got to break down those national borders. In a sense, he's the quickest way to globalism is through regionalism. So this time that we're in right now, a great deal of turmoil, a great deal of uncertainty. I think all of that is driving people to make up these alliances, to come together, to compromise, and then out of that, it's going to rise this group of guys. I assume, and those group of guys, they're probably going to be technocrats, because you can't get to the positions by just being a political windbag and talking about things you don't understand.
Mhm.
Elon Musk intimately knows what he's talking about when he's talking about, like, artificial intelligence or rocket technology, or all of these things, since he's the guy that creates this stuff,
Mhm.
the subject matter expert. A politician commenting on Elon Musk's technology isn't the subject matter expert. He is not. He's just a talking head. People are tired of talking heads. They want somebody that knows what they're talking about and can actually make things happen. And I think that's where these technocrats rise up. And for them, it's in their best interest for things to become completely digital in terms of tokenization. But I do think that there is a division amongst these technocrats here and these technocrats over here on where they want to take the world, or where they see the threat lying.
Yeah, yeah. I think that when you said about regionalism coming together to form globalism, I think I remember reading that. Was it Lincoln Bloomfield in the 60s? I think it was the 60s. He was positioned to find out the quickest way to a global governance by the UN, and he wrote a paper on this. And that's one of the things that was said, is that you create these one regional alliances, and then it effectively becomes globalism. But in terms of the technocrats and the split, as in, like, a section of technocrats are thinking one thing and one section of technocrats are thinking another. Have you ever read up on Game B?
On what?
Game B?
Game B? No, never heard
Yeah.
of that.
So Game B was positioned. It was like a group of, like, individuals, Jordan Hall, things like that, like individuals very astute in their environment. And as far as I know, Peter Thiel was in the periphery of this. But they in 2012 decided to come together and think the world is doomed, in their opinion, right, heading on the natural course that it's heading on, so we need to reshape the world. 2012 they formed this think tank. It lasts about a year, 2 years, then it breaks up, and the whole point of it was to find out how to bring a new, well, let's, I'll be censored but I don't care, new world order, right? Now, most of them aren't thinking out of a biblical context. They're thinking out of, how do we make, society more palatable and amenable and all of this. But interestingly, you hit the nail on the head, because you said these technocrats are different from these. So they split up in 2014. The movement re-emerged in 2020. And one section believed in geopolitical and technological shifting by creating a new type of digital currency, a new type of commerce, a new type of identification online, digitalization, right? The other group said that the biggest problem is not corporate connections, but rather individual thought. That you and I, we can be together and we can, have the same digital ID, but we think differently. And they says that it's the thought element that needs to be
Mm.
cohesive. Otherwise, humanity's always going to have the same problems. So I find that interesting because you kind of just hit. That's why I wondered if you had read up on it. You kind of hit the nail on the head. They both split, but they're both taking the I guess the world in one direction. You've got the digitalization happening with CBDCs, digital IDs over here, all of that stuff, and then at the same time, you're getting the push of groupthink. If you say anything pro-Israel online, you're automatically attacked. If you say it out loud, you're automatically attacked. If you come out with a Christian perspective, you're automatically attacked. I think there was a Canadian minister on today or yesterday talking about how the Bible's perception on homosexuality and all that should be considered illegal. So it seems like we're going, and it all seems to be multifaceted. And I know I've went long-winded, but I wanted to say this because I wanted to ask you if you know anything about this. Can you see that in your screen? No, hold on. What about now?
Yes.
So ISO 20022 is the system that is replacing Swift. So I just took a second to read up on it, and this is where I want to know where you think you are in America in terms of this, because we're heading fast into digital IDs. There's no stopping it, and it doesn't matter what anybody's saying. We've all signed the petition. The petition was heard on October 2nd, and they basically said, "Yeah, we read the petition, but we're going for it." But this change of the Swift position or the Swift technology into this new technology is meant to be global, and it requires and it will require online identification verification, which is how with the Online Safety Act and all that, we've been going through that. So what I guess I'm asking, right, and this is a long-winded question, but it's right in your wheelhouse, right? We're here, like, I can't say if you can see, right? We're here, and say America is here. We're going down socialist communist agenda, taking us down that digitalization. America is here. And I guess if we are in a rapture window, right?
Mm.
How fast do you think things will shift? Because obviously Trump, like I said, is not a globalist, but those around him are shifting these things behind the scenes. Larry Ellison is the one behind Tony Blair, who's the one behind the digital ID over here. So I'm wondering how fast we could go down that route. Or do you think it's all going to be post rapture?
Okay. So barring any kind of crisis, economic crisis, existential crisis, I think in the normal processes of how things transition in the United States, it's still years and years away
Mm-hmm.
because you still have enough political weight amongst the Congress and the Supreme Courts and the states and the population that don't want everything to go digital. But we also know that, I use this example a lot. When I went to Germany back in 92, I had a very healthy, not 92, 94, when I was in the Army, I had a very healthy, respectable rock cassette tape collection. I mean, it was nice. I had all my favorite bands. I had a nice case. I had a radio player that played all my music. And then I get to the base in Germany, and they didn't sell any cassette tapes. All they sold were CDs. So by I was forced into having to restart my whole collection over again with CDs. And that's a silly example, but I think that more and more places that we go to that won't take cash,
Yeah.
um, but cash is still an option. It's going to force people down that road to go completely cashless. And if we're just looking at it through that metric, I still think that there's still a lot of time ahead of us, say anywhere from now to 5 years. but given the right crisis, I mean, it could happen overnight.
Yeah.
So, and I think Trump is smart enough to know that he's probably attuned enough to know with where we are in time that we're at the end of the third industrial revolution. We're well into the fourth industrial revolution, where everything is moving to the internet, everything is moving to streaming, everything is moving to digital. And I think he's trying to get ahead of that on a global stage by creating what was it, Stargate, and really throwing his weight behind stablecoin and all this other Bitcoin stuff. And I talked about it last night. I mean, just a couple of years ago, Bitcoin was kind of a fringe thing, and now it's like got a huge, like 4.7 trillion in the economy now, the global economy. It's made leaps and bounds. So we can see that this can happen very rapidly. I just think that we have so many safeguards in place in the United States. On the natural course of things, it would still take a lot of time, but just give the right crisis, and boom, things can happen very rapidly. Like 9/11,
Yeah.
uh, the Patriot Act, that they had tried to pass that in the 90s a couple of times, and it wouldn't go anywhere. They couldn't get it passed through Congress. And it just took a 9/11 to happen, and that was signed into law within 30 days. So, and they just basically took the Homeland anti-terrorism bill that Biden and this other Democrat had come up with, and changed some names, changed some dates, and boom, it was there. It's like a big stack
Mhm.
of this whole thing, and it created the most Orwellian surveillance type of legislation that's ever been passed in the United States. So, and it just took the right crisis. So I think that everything is going to get positioned in just the right amount of time and place and people and resources, and everything is going to be ready to go. And then they're just going to wait for the right crisis to happen. And then they can bypass all the red tape of Congress. They can bypass all the red tape of the judicial system, the states, the will of the people, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's coming. I think, but it's going to wait. It's going to take the requisite global crisis in order for that to get over that final hurdle. So I hope that's the rapture. I mean, I hope that that is what the crisis is that does that. But I don't think we'll see it this side of the rapture. I think we're going to still continue to see the encroachment of digital currency and digital everything, digitalization of everything, up until the point that we go up. But I don't know that it's going to cross that final hurdle to where it's kind of mandatory, and that's the only thing you can use at that point. So,
Well, we're sitting at a time in which there's crisis looming, right? You know, you've got the possible escalation of conflict with Russia in Europe. So the coalition of the willing, which Mr. Starmer decided that it was a good idea for us to sign up to and give our soldiers over to the EDU, the European Defence Union, so Europe has a standing army. Um, the coalition of the willing are putting boots on the ground. The plan is to put, you know, we already saw that was it the Shadowhawk, the missile that caused a big explosion in Russia, and because it hit a chemical plant, and that was given by the UK. Do you think war could be it, or do you think certainly I don't know? Trump is certainly stepping into situations where perhaps the need is there for him to step into, you know, in terms of Iran and things like that. But I know that at heart, he is always someone who tries to sort of distance America away from war. Do you think that if there was that war, another sort of all out European war like there was in World War Two, World War One, do you think America would get involved and then that would cause issues again? Like that could be the global crisis, or could it be something, let's say, out of this world? You know, like, you know, what are your thoughts? If it isn't the rapture, so if it isn't the rapture, what could be? Because I think their position, I think even Keir Starmer is relying on a moment of chaos, a moment of catastrophe for getting mandatory digital ID across the line. So what are your thoughts if it isn't the rapture?
so war is always one of the favorite options for potentates and dictators and authoritarian type leaders to do any number of things. It's a very because it's a crisis, an existential crisis for a nation to get involved in a kind of a massive war like that.
Yeah.
And I think that with regard to at least what Trump's doing now with, say, Venezuela, the cartels, even going over there and muscling China into backing down, he's trying to get the U.S. I think he senses war is coming. I think
Mhm.
because he does have a lot of bad religious advisors around him, but he has a lot of incredibly smart historians and incredibly smart
Yeah.
people that have studied geopolitics. Alex Jones, Steve Bannon, those guys. And I'm not saying that they're good theologically. I think they're off base theologically. They're either post trib or they're post millennial or et cetera. But from a geopolitical standpoint, I think they're very adept at reading the tea leaves and seeing
Yeah.
things that are coming. And so we're in this time just like right before World War II. It's very tumultuous. The U.S. at that time was climbing itself out of the Great Depression. I mean, and there was just a lot of bad that had happened, and it had created a great deal of uncertainty in the world. And I think that's exactly where we are now. If history does repeat itself, or at the very least, if it rhymes, then what we should see is a war of some kind that could involve Russia, that could involve Europe to a large degree. Europe, I mean, we know that Russia has done some airspace incursions into,
Yeah.
I think, Latvia or Estonia, one of the Baltic states, and then also a little bit into Poland. And I
Poland.
don't
Yeah.
know, I don't know what happened with the airspace incursions there, but it seems I think the Polish shot down one of the drones or something to that effect, or that it was crashed there. But it seems like Russia's not willing to back down. Europe is itching to get this fight on because when they do that, they are going to be able to push so much legislation through and things that they can't get done in peacetime. That's
Mhm.
why I think that's why they're itching for this conflict so that they can use these emergency powers in order to ram through things that they normally can't get rammed through. And
Yeah.
my understanding is that Keir Starmer is incredibly unpopular right now. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he's very unpopular.
The British population right now is like literally like a breath's hair away from just civil war and taken to the streets with torches and pitchforks. I think that he is looking at this war or looking at any kind of war as a way to
Yeah.
placate people's anger because it's boiling up and it needs some kind of a release. So they're looking for a release. So if the rapture isn't that release, I definitely think there will be some type of I don't want to say it's going to be a world war, but it would certainly be opportunistic for a world war. So, for example, if Russia does have some kind of wider conflict that goes into Europe, that would also be a great time for China to go ahead and make their moves on Taiwan. And they would just launch army waves and waves and waves of drones against Taiwan without even launching a single ship first. And I think just even doing that, China or Taiwan is going to have to do kind of the Samson option and destroy all of their chip industries so that China doesn't get a hold of that. And the U.S. cannot allow China to get a hold of that. And at the same time, you could see Kim Jong Un preemptively strike Seoul, Korea, and make a move there. So the whole reason for why this has the potential to explode out very rapidly into a global war is because the enemies of the United States know that if the U.S. is focused on a single enemy, it is going to be almost guaranteed loss for them. But if
Mhm.
they can get the U.S. spread out into multiple theaters of war in the Atlantic and Europe and the Middle East and the Pacific, then we're going to be spread thin, and it's going to be very difficult for us, and it's going to be a much longer, more protracted kind of conflict that works better in their favor than simply allowing Russia to go at it alone. So I think Russia, Putin, Medvedev, Xi Jinping, a lot of these leaders that are up in age, they recognize that their time to uh, make these great changes for their nations is coming to a close, that is coming to some kind of an end, whether it's the end of their own lives or that they are facing existential crisis like population collapse, economic collapse, famines, any number of things that are going on. And I think that they're going to move sooner rather than later because they don't have time to wait anymore. Even
Yeah.
setting aside the rapture, setting aside anything from a theological standpoint, they are going to have to start making these moves because they can't afford to wait any longer. So they've got to do something. And whether that crisis comes by way of the rapture or it just comes through the natural course of events with the domino effect. This thing happens here, and it just triggers everything else. That's certainly a possibility as well.
Yeah. Are you good for a few questions?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, just before we do the questions, I just say, guys, you've got a minute or two just to get the rest of them on. Have you seen this? This is, I think it's 1X Neo. It is the new apparent house robot that they're trying to roll out, that they're actually rolling out now. This is supposed to be the. It's creepy. I don't know about you, but have you seen this yet? This.
I would not want to get slapped by that thing. That thing has got
Oh,
massive hands.
I actually read the article on it, and they said 1X Neo is not scary and doesn't have red eyes and or claws, but is rather more amenable to the people. And I was like, the very fact that you have to tell me it's not scary puts it in the scary category for me. But anyway, we're ready for
I
some
haven't seen
questions.
that yet.
Um, okay, so Jason Garza has asked, "Do you believe that Israel will be divided again?"
I don't think so. I think what will happen is they are going to take Gaza and internationalize that. And I know Turkey is chomping at the bit to be a power broker there and to have some kind of sway over that because they want to get their foot into Israel. They want to get their foot back onto the land there. Um, but I do think that Gaza will probably be turned into some kind of Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Doha or something like Bahrain. And I don't think that it's not going to go back to the way it was. Obviously, I mean, it's going to take 10+ years to get that place cleaned up to begin with. So I think there's going to be some type of a solution that comes out of that to where they kind of turn that into some type of an international, not international, but a multinational type of project effort or whatever, and that could have its own prophetic imports. As far as the land itself, I'm still steadfast on this that Israel is going to annex officially Judea and Samaria. They have to because they cannot be living in unwalled villages in peace and safety and all that without controlling the heartland, and that has to happen prior to Gog and Magog. So I still think that that's a reality. I know Trump's totally against it. I don't know why he is so steadfast against it. I know why. I mean, he's kind of buddied up with Qatar and these other countries to make these alliances for the Abraham Accords, and for him, that is his crowning achievement, his magnus opus. That's that if he wants to go down in history as having achieved what no
Yeah,
political leader can do, which is peace in the Middle East, and he needs the Abraham Accords to be that central to that. Um, so, with that said, you have an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object colliding, and what you have collateral damage. And so, I just think what happens is Israel is going to go ahead and at some point they're going to formally annex Judea and Samaria. That will probably trigger some political whatever that'll kick off. And in the end, though, I think Israel is going to keep their land. They're going to keep that, and they're going to be able to drive out the terrorist factions. And the justification that they have is the same justification that we are using in trying to kick out illegal aliens or cartel members, Tren de Aragua, MS-13, all these, Sinaloa cartel, and all these different groups that are just in here causing problems. And I don't know what causes Trump or the administration to change their mind on it, but I think they're just going to have to accept that as a reality. So they may bend on the Gaza thing if they can annex Judea and Samaria, which they already won, and it's already theirs. They just haven't exercised that authority over that area since '67, since the Six Day War. So I think that that's coming, and they may yield on some other part of the Abraham Accords if they're allowed to annex Judea and Samaria. So they'll annex it, but it may come at a cost.
do you think this isn't their question, but do you think the third temple would be another bargaining chip in terms of that?
Not this side of the Gog and Magog conflict. Now, I not no, this is just my thoughts on it. I think that either the Muslims accidentally destroy Al Aqsa and Dome of the Rock, errant missile, stray missile, whatever, or it's destroyed at the end of Gog and Magog with that massive earthquake that hits at the end, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it
Yeah.
levels that. And at the end of that Gog and Magog war, Israel now thinking they're done, right? Because if they're going simply off Ezekiel,
Yeah.
what happens after Gog and Magog? After chapter 38, 39, you go straight into the third temple. And we look at that as a millennial temple, but they're looking at that as just their third temple. It's going to be rebuilt, and they're thinking they're done with war. They don't have the book of Revelation. They don't have the New Testament. They don't have the Olivet Discourse. They don't recognize anything in the New Testament as authoritative. So for them, Gog and Magog is kind of the last battle, and they might roll Zechariah 12, Zechariah 14 up into that battle as well. But for them, and that's why I think they rushed so quickly into making a political alliance with the Antichrist, because for one,
Yeah.
the Antichrist is a political leader. He's not God incarnate. He's just a man like Moses or Abraham or even a guy like Trump or Cyrus. He's a guy that is a world mover, world shaker. And so for them, they're thinking, okay, hey, our Bible says we're done. We don't have any more wars after this. God just supernaturally defeated all of our enemies in one fell swoop. He also cleared off the top of the Temple Mount. And look, what follows after chapter 39 is chapter 40. It's rebuilding this temple. So we have all the instructions how to rebuild it. So they think they're good. And they might make some kind of a deal, or they will make some kind of arrangement with the Antichrist and or that 10 king coalition or whatever. And I think that is what starts the clock for Daniel's 70th week. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've got Lucia has asked, apart from their salvation in the Lord, how should we pray for the Orthodox rabbi in New York who actually supports Zoran Mamdani and prays and praying for the complete destruction of the state of Israel?
I would just say for anybody, not just this Orthodox Jew, that the Holy Spirit would draw them to the point of repentance, and that would open their eyes to show them that salvation is only found in Jesus Christ, that their Messiah has already come. There's still, there's Jewish channels that I follow that are very solid on geopolitics and very
Yeah.
solid conservative, et cetera, et cetera. But they're still waiting. They're very open about this. They're very open about still waiting for the Messiah to come.
Yeah.
And so the same prayer I have for them is the same prayer I would have for this Orthodox rabbi or for the ultra Orthodox or anybody else, the Muslims, that God would open their eyes and that they might find salvation in Jesus Christ. Because I mean, if we look at all of the things going on in the world today, I don't care how serious it is. Everything on this side of reality, it pales in comparison to eternity. It
Mm.
pales in comparison to what's coming. And you mentioned or you showed that picture of uh, Nikki or
Nick
Gervais,
Fuentes.
Ricky
Oh,
Gervais.
Ricky Gervais, yeah.
Same thing with like Bill Maher. You
Yeah.
had these guys that were very atheistic, very even I would say liberal but their own liberalism. They're seeing how far left their side has gone. They've kind of
Yeah.
shook them out of reality. And I think if those guys can even step back and honestly be honest about everything and recognize, hey, the real threat, even I think Christopher Hitchens, I think it
Yeah.
was him, that said that Christianity he much prefer Christianity over anything Islam can bring to the picture,
Yeah.
is how dangerous it is and how wicked and violent and all this other stuff. So I think that as time progresses, that God is going to continually, especially to the Orthodox Jews, he's going to continue to reveal that he is still in control, still running this. And I think if that's to me why, like, if the rapture were to happen on Tish B'Av, it would be a huge red flag for them. It would be like, whoa, all of these evangelical Christ followers are now gone supernaturally. I think to me that makes a lot of sense. That would wake them up and that would start them on that path to rediscovering their Messiah.
Yeah.
So
No, that makes sense. Um, where are we? Okay. Squid Opotamus, right? Squid Opotamus. Since USA has the largest population of Jews outside of Israel and with anti Semitism on the rise, what do you think will happen in the USA when the last of the Jews makes the pilgrimage back to Israel?
Well, I certainly think that that's part and parcel why anti-Semitism. That's part of what anti-Semitism is designed to do. It's designed to drive the Jews back to their homeland to get them all in one place.
Yeah.
But if you look at all the people that are like a quarter Jewish, I have like 4% Jewish, like in my genes, or my sister does. I'm assuming we have the same parents, so I'm assuming that I have about 4% uh, Jewish blood in me or Jewish DNA. That he's not going to be able to get all the Jewish people out of everywhere, but
Hmm.
the people that are 100% Jewish that are reading the tea leaves, so to speak, and they're seeing the anti-Semitism in the same way that a lot of Jews in pre-World War II Europe started to see things getting very hostile to them. They decided to leave early. Uh, that's the same kind of thing I think that they sense here now with Trump in office, and again with the reestablishment of law and order, and him being, pro Judeo-Christian values, etc. They might have some concern to stay put, because they think, well, law and order has come back into the U.S. and there's some safety in that, but I think ultimately that's what it's designed to do, is to drive all the Jews back to the land of Israel, so they're all in one spot, so that Satan can swoop in and destroy them all.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's going to be anything before the rapture. I don't think all the Jews will leave the United States before the rapture, or Europe or anywhere else.
Oh, there you are. Do you think the UN Muslim anti-Israel, anti-American backed Mandani will be their puppet for global purposes? But
No,
you don't think he'll be elected. So
no, I think he's too stupid. Honestly, the guy is incredibly stupid. He's really stupid.
yeah.
And Satan is not going to throw all his eggs in that basket. He's going to throw his eggs into a basket of somebody that's incredibly intelligent, incredibly well spoken, incredibly powerful, and able to maneuver in all these circles. I mean, the guy just Cuomo destroyed him in that debate. I mean, just destroyed him.
Yeah.
And Cuomo's not the sharpest tool in the shed either. So
No.
it's like getting a beat down from Biden. It's like you got to be pretty bad to get beaten down by Biden. So.
Okay. D has asked, do you guys believe that governments are in cahoots to cause so much chaos across the board that people will grasp at anything? I wouldn't say all governments, but you can.
I don't know if governments are even perceptive. They perceive themselves that way. I think that, uh, but the spiritual forces behind them,
Yeah.
the satanic fallen angels, the princes, the archons, the powers and high places, the wickedness, etc. They are certainly driving these governments and these leaders to do particular things in order to further the Luciferian agenda. But I don't know that these people are smart enough to know that they're just tools right now in the hands of these fallen angels, and these fallen angels are incredibly intelligent, incredibly powerful, and far more capable than these human puppets that they're driving around. So they're just tools to their means to an end at the moment.
Is it playing here? Oh, can you see me?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. Is it me? Because you disappear off my screen, but I don't know if it's me disappearing off yours.
you're
Uh,
just scaring off mine, so I
oh,
don't
okay. So it's my fault. Sorry.
know.
Yeah. Well, I was. My sort of opinion on that is that I don't believe that it's so much the governments that are in cahoots, but I would say that we're living in the age of the think tank. That there are think tank influencers, just like you have influencers online, you would have influencers in the types of, the TBI, the Tony Blair Institute, or the World Economic Forum, or even probably more notable influencing organizations like UNESCO. And I would suggest that there are those in those institutes that are cross. So those think tanks are certainly cross pollinizing each other. They're mixing with each other. I know that I done a deep dive on Tony Blair and the new head, or the head of this, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements this year. And I was looking for correlation, and you go into things like ChatGPT, and it'll tell you straight away the meetings that they have chaired together, that they've come together, such as, and in the secret meetings, such as Bilderberg, that they both attend. And I would suggest that there are certain aspects of that amongst the think tanks that are trying to push the governments, but those I don't hold out much hope for politicians. I think
Yeah.
politicians get power hungry and they're after that, as opposed to, and I don't think anybody really gets into it with a nefarious intent. Maybe they do, but I would suggest those that are the real puppet masters behind the scenes, they're being used by spirits, but they're also being the
Yeah.
influencers upon those in power.
Yeah.
We've got Vindog here. Um, do you guys believe that the US will eventually strong arm and then turn on Israel?
I don't see that this side of the rapture. But I mean, in a way, Trump has already tried to strong arm Israel on a number of other issues.
Yeah,
So, um, I honestly, Trump was asked, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe, or maybe it's months. The time is just kind of everything is being compressed right now.
yeah.
But he was asked by a reporter if he still supported the two-state solution, and he said no. And the reporter asked him why, and he goes, "Well, because of October 7th. I mean, that changed everything." So I think that Jared Kushner and his influence in all of this is somebody that Trump leans on a lot, and the Steve Witkoff are trying to find ways to appease both the Arab world as well as Israel, and they're going to try to come up with some solutions that don't seem like dividing the land,
Mm,
but it's going to cause Israel to acquiesce on some other things like the annexation issue, right? So um, I think that the Knesset voted while JD Vance was there, and they voted to annex Judea and Samaria. And JD Vance was angry about that, and I was surprised at his anger, and I was surprised at Trump's anger over the issue. But I think apart from that, I don't really see them trying to push for an Arab two-state solution anymore in regard to that. But again, they could take Gaza, make it into some kind of multinational Dubai, Abu
yeah,
Dhabi, whatever, and that would be right up Trump's alley. So in a sense, he's not dividing the land because it was already divided out before he ever came into office.
hmm,
But it's trying to put some type of a permanent foothold into what the land that God gave Israel that is probably equally as bad in terms of trying to create some kind of a permanence there that will always have some type of non-Jewish state inside of the borders of the biblical lands that God's given Israel. So I don't know that that's any better.
yeah.
Um,
So JMR-V2N has asked, why and for what purpose is it for a ballroom to be funded by corporations at the White House?
what? Why is it?
So basically, I think it's like a lobbying question. Why are corporations funding the ballroom at the White House or a ballroom at the White House?
Well, because one, he's not going to be able to get he didn't want the taxpayers, according to him, he didn't want the taxpayers to foot the bill on that. But
Yeah,
I think from a political standpoint, it makes sense to have a ballroom there to have some type of place that can house these kinds of functions that traditionally they've had to go somewhere else inside of DC. And DC had become such a cesspool of violence and car robbery, carjackings and stabbing, all kinds of stuff happening outside. That it's all kind of part and parcel with not the militarization of things, but like securing things. Anything that can be secured will be secured, and preferably within the grounds where the leadership's going to be living. You've got a number of the Trump administration folks now living on military bases because it's not safe to live just out in a normal, where I guess wherever they normally lived. I don't know where they normally live, but like those neighborhoods and stuff, they can't live in those places anymore. It's too violent. There's too much. There's the
yeah,
threat is too great. So putting a ballroom into the East Wing, which traditionally had been just the First Lady's wing, And she's looking at this. Do I really need all this space? I mean, most women, if you ask them, do you really need this big of a closet? And it's like a massive closet. Yeah, of course, but for whatever reason, Melania Trump is love the idea of the ballroom, so they just kind of ran forward with it. And every president leaves some kind of mark on the White House, or has in the past throughout the last, I don't know, 60, 100 years. Even the Clintons, were stealing like the silverware, and like taking all the keys off of. They took all the keys off of the keyboards. Anything that had a W, they took all the W's off. And George W. Bush won, and so I know it's kind of petty, but like everybody wants to leave a mark. And Trump is a real estate developer. Of course, he's going to want to leave the White House better than he found it. So, in terms of how he raised the money, he's never going to get the support of the American people to, pay it for it with taxpayer funding,
Yeah,
and that goes against his own kind of credos. I mean, I don't know if he's still taking a paycheck. I don't think he even takes a paycheck. He didn't take
yeah.
a paycheck during his first administration. So,
Yeah.
um, it seems to go against his character.
So Renee has asked, I don't get how everything happens after Ezekiel 38. God wins the war for them. They don't need an antichrist at that point. They'd have confidence and not need anyone. How does it all play out?
Again, I think that the Jews, they don't have the New Testament, so they think they're done. At the end of the Gog and Magog conflict, and it's such a supernatural victory for them. They kind of think they're untouchable at that point.
Yeah,
I think, and since they don't believe that the Messiah, they're still waiting for a Messiah, and they don't believe this Messiah is God incarnate. He's just a man. So
hmm,
from their perspective, they've just been delivered from this massive conflict that could have, destroyed them many times over. God supernaturally wipes out all their enemies, and you're talking about these are all Muslim, primarily Muslim fighters from both Sunni and Shia factions, coming from every corner of the world, every direction, and God supernaturally wipes them out. And then I think a cherry on the top of the icing is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, and then that gives them clear divine providence to go ahead and move forward with the third temple. And if they follow Ezekiel 39, well, Ezekiel 40 through 48 is the moving forward in that process, and that's rebuilding their third temple. So they've already got all the materials set aside, ready to go. They've already have these red heifers that they've been. I mean, I think the ceremony that they had, I think it was a legit ceremony,
hmm,
even though it wasn't done on the Temple Mount. Because if you go back to Leviticus and Exodus, they didn't even have they didn't even do it in the first red heifer wasn't even in Israel when they
yeah,
sacrificed it. I think they were still in the desert, the wilderness. So the Sinai Peninsula somewhere. So they weren't doing it then. All that stuff that's come out of that the red heifer has to be done on the temple or Mount of Olives or whatever. That's all rabbinical tradition that's come about, after the fact.
yeah.
But so
But
they had to go.
it could even go further in the sense that you have Ezekiel 38, which wipes out probably the Wahhabi faction of fundamentalist Islam. So now you're left with the moderate Islamic contingent within certain countries. They see an individual come on the scene who is not as stringently, I guess, akin to what the hadiths write about the Jali or the Mahdi, right? And they accept him because they think, right, this is our savior because he's making this treaty, because the Mahdi makes a treaty. But he's I see him as a Westerner. I think it's somebody out of reconstituted Europe. A politician steps on the scene, and that's who it is. But they maybe, the moderate Islamic world maybe accept him. The Jews accept him because they're thinking, right, this guy's now promised to build our temple. Fantastic. This must be, or the red heifer. This must be the Messiah. This must be the coming. But then that sort of adds up to Revelation 6 and the nature, because a lot of people had asked this before. The nature of execution found in Revelation 6 onward, the beheading is, and it's probably a gross generalization, but it is very synonymous with one religious section of the community. So I would say it is sort of adding up to a whole load of different things. Ezekiel 38 being that, I guess,
Well,
torture, the lighting paper, that it just goes off and everything, the catalyst, everything.
the French actually did it first with the
I
guillotine.
know, yeah, but I can't say it's bringing back the guillotine. Although they did in one of the Tim LaHaye ones. I think it was a guillotine that was used.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's just me. I can't see the guillotine being brought back. Okay, we've got a question.
Oh! I've got a solution for that.
What?
If you've ever seen Slaughterbots, it's the movie that came out in the 2016, 2017. They have these little mini drones that they fly around, right? And the drone just has one shape charge in it, and that thing can do facial recognition, can do whatever, and they can program that thing to fly, and it can. And the guy actually, it's like a TED talk in the movie. It's a TED talk, and so
Right.
he's got a dummy off to his right, and he
Uh,
takes his drone and he just throws it out over the audience, and it's like flying around and doing that thing, and then he programs it, and boom, it hits straight into that dummy's head and takes the head off, right? So
oh, that,
there's a way that that could happen with just these little mini drones that you can mass produce those things. And if you don't have the mark, boom, it's going to go straight for your head. So that to me is a potential workaround for the whole, guillotine thing.
thank you for that because I was looking to have a nightmare tonight and I was trying to fit something. I'm only joking. I won't be here for that, so that's okay. All right, we've got a question from Angel about Mandani again. Do you think if Mandani is not elected, they will use that to cause protests and blame it on the Jews, blame
Of
it on Jewish
course, of
people? Yeah,
course, of course. You know they will.
yeah.
And
Everything is the fault of the Jews.
and Mamdani, I don't know if he's going to go the way of like Beto O'Rourke in Texas. He kept running for. I think he ran for governor. He lost. He ran for senator. He lost. And he was this crazy, whacked out liberal, progressive, whatever. I liken Mamdani to a Beto O'Rourke. So Beto O'Rourke just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. I
Yeah,
don't know if this guy drops off. I think he probably will drop off after he loses because he's an idiot. And I don't mean to be rude about it, but the guy is not intelligent at all. So um, he could drop off. I don't see any practical use for him if he's not mayor. Uh,
yeah.
and again, I think the Democrat Party in and of itself is kind of done. So
See, I wondered if they were trying to kind of emulate London, emulate the way Britain is, but obviously it's a different contingent right now, certainly under a different administration. But with Sadiq Khan, who's both socialist and Islamic in nature, it's that Red Green Alliance back, in full flow. And we've seen the state of London. With Sadiq Khan, it just seems like Mamdani is kind of like that. Well, this is our version, and this is where we're going here. But I don't know; it could be wrong. Like you said, it may just fall flat and he doesn't get elected at all.
yeah.
Um, and let me just check. I think that was all the questions. Um, yeah. Oh, no, wait a minute. Oh, we've got one last question if you can take it. Yeah.
Hmm?
Sherry has asked, are the drones the locusts in Revelation? I'll be Revelation 9.
I don't think they are. I think the locusts that come out of the abyss are demonic
Yeah.
entities. I think they're actual beings.
Hmm.
I don't think that they're robotic or mechanized or anything like that. I think they're going to be actual demonic forces that come out. And interestingly, maybe we look at the mark of the beast as like I look at it as kind of like the pinnacle of man's technological prowess because of all the things it's going to be able to do. It could, we looked at that passage in Revelation 9 where it says people will long to die and death will flee from them. And one of the things that this mark could possibly do is have like this genetic through nanobots or whatever, could have some kind of genetic packaging that induces incredibly fast healing, so that
Yeah.
you're constantly in a state of healing. And just at that point where mankind reaches a state where they seemingly can live forever, God unleashes these demonic locusts on them that create incredible torment, so much so that people want to die and now they can't. So uh, it, I don't know. I think the mark is technologically
Yeah.
in that sense, but I think the judgment is going to be from the pit of hell. So it's going to be demonic.
Well,
Forces.
can I just read this? This is Amos 7:11 because I think it's interesting because it connects what we were talking about. Thus has the Lord God showed me. This is from the Septuagint, right? So this is where we get this translation from. Behold, a swarm of locusts coming from the east, and behold, one caterpillar king, Gog. So it relates Gog as the obviously like people tend to put Gog as maybe Putin or something, but it's not the individual; it's the spirit behind the individual. Gog is a principality, so I would suggest that, like you said, I think it's completely demonic, but I can see that it could be integrated. Certainly, if you take Nephilistic magic and Nephilistic science, which are basically going to be the same thing,
Yeah.
it could be some sort of hybrid of technology and the demonic as well. So I think we've answered all the questions. Guys, I want you to say a big thank you to Pete for coming on. And you missed it earlier. He got his guitar out for me, he was serenading me. It was fantastic. And uh, yeah, so guys, again, give this a like, give this a share. And a big thank you to Pete for coming on. And tomorrow we will have a video up for you on portals and different things like that. It is my daughter's 16th birthday, so I will not be on. And then on Friday, I'm in Iceland at a conference. Please pray for me because I know Pete knows how stressed I am that I'm going to be speaking through an interpreter. Now, most of you guys need an interpreter for when I'm on here, but I'm sure the subtitles can come up anyway, so you guys are sorted. But keep me in prayer and keep Pete in prayer as well, guys. Guys, God bless. I call you head and not the tail, above and not beneath, kings, queens, and priests in Jesus' mighty name. And remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you.